Good morning, children. Welcome to Commerce class. See, in the last class, we've completed the chapter Sole Proprietorship Business. Now we shall go to the fifth chapter, Hindu Undivided Family and Partnership. See, under the Hindu Undivided Family, we'll be learning what is the meaning of a Hindu undivided family and what are the laws which governs that, the characteristics of Hindu undivided family. Now let us go into the topic. See, on those days, now only the nuclear family is in existence. People all used to live in a joint family system only. The grandparents will be there and the brothers of the grandparents will be there, and again their children will be there, and all the family members together, they do their family business where each person will be contributing his part of money or his part of labor, and together they will be doing the business. And the head of the family, the male head of the family will be the manager, or he will be taking all the important decisions regarding the business. Such a type of organization, it is a distinct form of organization. Particularly it is existent only in India, because the joint family concept as such, it doesn't prevail in any other part of the world. So it is common only in Indian society. So this joint Hindu family is a Indian business form of classification of the organization. Again, it does not have a separate or legal entity like how we have in a partnership or in a sole proprietorship concern. It is governed by the Hindu law, because it is this form of organization is existent only in India. The Hindu law only governs the the features or the entity. All the rules and regulations are governed only by the Hindu law. Now let us go to the meaning of HUF, that is Hindu undivided family. Families agree to live and work together, invest their resources and labor jointly, and share profits or losses together. Then this family is known as composite family or Hindu undivided family. Underline, Hindu undivided family is also called as composite family. See here, let us understand the meaning by splitting it into phrases. Families, they live together when two or more families, they agree to live together in a same premises. Okay, and they also agree to work together. Okay, they agree to work together, and either they put labor and they put capital. Okay, all the resources are pulled in, and the profits or the losses are shared by them. The profits or losses are shared by them. Then this family, how do you call this family? As composite family or Hindu undivided family. Example, a chartered accountant firm, you can take it as a, because the father will be a chartered accountant, his brothers also will be into the same field. Okay, they will be helping each other, and the profit or loss will be shared among the family members only. Next is, there are two schools of Hindu law. One is called as the Dayabhaga school. This Dayabhaga school, which gives the rules and regulations of the joint Hindu undivided family, is prevalent in Bengal and Assam only. In the other parts of the country, the Mitakshara law is applicable. The Mitakshara Hindu law is applicable in rest of the part of India. So according to the Mitakshara law, only the sons, if there is a son in the family, by birth only the son has got the right to inherit the property of the joint family. The female who is born in that family, she doesn't have the rights to enjoy the property of the joint Hindu family, because she is a person who goes to some other family. So by virtue of the fact that if a son is born in the family, he enjoys the property rights of the Hindu undivided family. But later on, with the introduction of the Hindu Succession Act in 2005, even the female members of the Hindu undivided family is entitled to receive, has got the property rights also. So a male or a female, both of them, whoever is born in the Hindu undivided family, will be are given the rights to inherit the property of the Hindu undivided family. Next is, let us understand what are the characteristics of Hindu undivided family. See, this Hindu undivided family business is governed by Hindu law. Okay, so there is a separate Hindu law which governs or which gives the protocol of this is how a Hindu undivided family business should be. Next is, who manages the business management. See, all the affairs of this Hindu undivided family, it is controlled, it is managed by one person, and this person normally he will be the senior most male member of the family who is capable of handling the business, and all the family members will have full faith and confidence in that person. Okay, and whatever the decisions and he takes, okay, will be will be beneficial for the Hindu undivided family business. And not only that, he is the sole person who enters into contract or deals with the outsiders regarding the business matters. However, the members of the family who are the members of the business also, okay, can talk with the outsiders or deal with the outsiders, but they have to do that only with the permission of this person. So this person who is entitled with all the benefits of controlling and managing the business is called as Karta of the family. How is he called as? Karta of the family, or he is called as a manager. Please underline this. Okay, the one who manages and controls the business of joint Hindu family is called as Karta. Next is membership by birth. Who can become a member of the Hindu undivided family business? Anyone who is born, okay, in that family acquires the right to become the member of the joint Hindu undivided family. Just by virtue of birth in that family itself, a child becomes a member of the Hindu undivided family. So the membership, it doesn't require any consent, no agreement is there. Just because a child is born, he or she becomes a member of the Hindu undivided family business. Next is about the liability. Okay, what is the liability of the members of the family? See, except the Karta. Who is Karta? The manager of the Hindu undivided family business. Except the Karta, all the members of the business, their liability is very, very limited. Okay, suppose if a business is under loss, they have to pay huge amount of money to the outsiders. Okay, the Karta is only responsible for paying the outstanding dues to the creditors. Okay, all the other members of the family, okay, their liability is very limited. Whatever the contribution of share of money they have given, that is the amount of their liability. They need not give any amount towards the meeting of the creditors outstanding. So the Karta has got unlimited liability, whereas the members, members of the joint Hindu undivided family, their liability is limited. So the amount of debts can be recovered from the personal property also to pay so the Karta can take the personal property and repay the debts also, but again that will be decided by the Karta. Next is permanent existence. See, the death of a person or the inability of a person or the insolvency of any one of the member in the family will not affect the Hindu undivided family business. The business will keep on going. If the existing Karta of the family dies, okay, the next eldest person will become the Karta of the Hindu undivided family business. The business will keep on going. Okay. The death of a person or the insolvency of a person will not affect the family business. Next is implied authority. Implied authority means something which is understood even without any written agreement, without any explicit saying. In a joint family firm, only the Karta has got the implicit authority to enter into the contract. Okay, whether it can be for debts, repayment of debts, or whether for pledging any property. Okay, it can be in the regular course of the business. Only the Karta has got the right to do all these. It is not expressed in the contract, but it is implied. Implied means it is automatically understood without any explicit definition. Okay, so he has got the implied authority to do what all? Okay, to enter into contract for any debts or for any pledging of any property or the ordinary purpose of any business activity. So the Karta has got the right to enter into contract. Next is minor. Minor also co-partner. just because a boy is born in the baby is born in the family, immediately he becomes a co-partner. Co-partner means the member he becomes a member of the business also. Just a newborn child can also be a co-partner of the joint Hindu undivided family business. Next is dissolution. The dissolution means what? Dissolving of the business. Okay, putting an end to the business. The business can be dissolved only at the will of all the members of the family. Just because one person is willing to dissolve the Hindu undivided family business, that cannot be done. Okay, and it has to be done with the consent of all the members. Any single member has got the right to get the business dissolved, and it has to be at the will of all the members. Everyone should agree for the dissolution. So these are the characteristics of joint Hindu undivided family business. Okay, again it is asked in short answers. Okay, the next topic what we'll be learning is partnership. The next form of business is partnership. See, in the previous chapter we learnt about just a second, the screen went somewhere. It went to the 48th page. Just a second, children. See, in the last lesson we learnt about sole proprietorship concern. Under the sole proprietorship concern, we understood the demerits of sole proprietorship concern. One of the biggest demerit of sole proprietorship concern is the unlimited liability and the capability of raising a huge amount of capital. All those were not available with respect to sole proprietorship concern. And the managerial skills, whatever is the managerial skills that an individual has, that only should be employed into his business. If I am a very intelligent person, I can use my intelligence to grow in my business. I cannot take the expertise advice of any other person. So the limitations of the sole proprietorship concern is totally not seen in the next form of business organization, which is called as partnership business organization. Under the partnership business organization, two or more people, they enter into partnership, okay, and they enter into an agreement to do a lawful business, and they also agree to share the profits which is of the business whatever is carried on by them, and it will be acted by the business will be done by everyone or by few people in consent with the other people. Now the persons who enter into partnership are called as partners. Okay, and collectively they are called as firm. Collectively the partnership is called as firm. The individuals who enter into partnership are called as what? Partners. Underline this. It is an important answer. It can be asked in 2 marks or in objectives. So, which law specifies the Partnership Act? The Partnership Act of 1932, according to section 4, it tells what is a partnership. Partnership is what? It is a legal relationship. Okay, it is a relationship between persons who have agreed to share the profits of a business carried on by all or any of them acting for all. Okay, let us learn it by splitting the definition. The Partnership Act says that, okay, partnership is what? It is a relationship. What sort of between whom? Between persons. Who are those people? They have agreed to share the profits. Share the profit of what? The business. They have agreed to share the profit of business. Who carries on? Either all of them carry the business. Okay, the business is carried on by all, or any of them acting for all. Or for example, if there are 8 partners, not all 8 partners will be active members in the business. Okay, there might be 4 partners who are very active, who will be acting on behalf of all the 8 people. Okay, so again let us have a recap. Partnership, it is what? It is a relation between whom? Persons who have agreed to share the profits of what? Of a business. It is carried on by whom? It is either carried on by all, or it can be carried on by any of them acting on behalf of all. Okay, so this is the definition given by Partnership Act. Next is a definition given by Haney. The relations which exist between persons competent to make contracts who agree to carry on lawful business in common with a view to profit gain. This is also quite a simple definition only. What is partnership? It is again a relation. Relation means what? The mutual what is it agreement which is being made between persons. These persons should be competent to make contract. That means they should have the eligibility to enter into a contract, okay, and who agree to carry on. These people who have entered into contract, okay, they have agreed to carry on what business? Lawful business. Anything which is given by the law as any legal business. Anything which is a legal business, they have agreed to do the legal business in common. All of them are doing it in common with what view? With a view to profit gain. See, if any people who have agreed together to do any social service, it is not called as a partnership. If their view is to gain profit, if such a relationship which is being agreed upon by more than by persons, it is called as partnership. Let us learn the characteristics of partnership. See children, since it is just a one-to-one communication, I keep on going with the topics. Suppose if you find it difficult to follow, take a pause, rewind whatever I have taught, and then you can just go to the next topic. Now we shall move to the characteristics of partnership. The first and foremost feature of partnership is contractual relationship. See, as such, the partners, who are partners? The people who enter into partnership, okay. It is this partnership, it is a result of agreement, okay. Two or more people, they agree to do a business, legal business, okay, they agree to do a business. So what is important there? A contract is important, an agreement is important. This agreement can either be oral agreement or it can be a written agreement also, okay. Consecutively, the persons who are not competent to enter a contract. Who are the people who are not competent enough to enter a contract? A minor cannot enter into a contract. A person below the age of 18 cannot enter into a contract. Likewise, a lunatic person cannot enter into a contract. Okay, so competent persons will enter into a contractual relationship. This is one of the foremost feature of partnership. Next is plurality of persons. Partnership itself means more than two people. Okay, so a minimum number of person is required to form a partnership. So what is the minimum number of people required to form a partnership? Minimum two people are required. Okay, so what is the maximum then? Whenever a minimum is given, definitely there will be a maximum also. So the maximum the persons required to form a partnership is 50. Minimum is 2. Okay, next is existence of business. Partnership must be carried out only for a lawful business, something which is legally authorized. Okay, any illegal activity, if people are entering into oral contract and doing an illegal business, you cannot call that as partnership. Okay, so the business should be lawful. It can also be a profession also. See, for example, if few doctors are together contributing money and building a hospital and running the hospital by themselves, that can also be called as partnership firm, because that is also a lawful profession. Okay, so it can be a lawful business or it can be a profession also. Likewise, chartered accountants. Okay, if 2 or 3 people join together and run a chartered accountancy firm, that is also called as partnership firm only. So when there is no business, there can be no partnership. Okay, partnership, if you see, for example, a club or a charitable association, you cannot call that as partnership, because profit is not the motive in a club. Or for a charitable association, profit is not the motive. But for a partnership firm, profit is a motive. Next is how to share the profits. Profit sharing. The business must be carried on for what? Only with a view to earn profit. Okay, and it should be shared among whom? Among the partners. So an agreement which is for a philanthropic activity. Philanthropic activity means any activity which is done for social welfare. Okay, done for the welfare of the society, that you call it as philanthropic activities. That cannot be called as profit partnership. So because profit motive is totally absent there. Next is mutual agency. See, in if for example, if there are 4 people, 4 partners are there in a partnership firm. See, simultaneously these people will be acting as principal as well as agent. Principal means the decision making person. Agent means one who is acting on behalf of the other. See, the work is being shared by the partners. So what will happen is, to the outsider, okay, a person can be a principal. Okay, he can tell these are the norms, which are, these are the terms and conditions to enter into a purchase agreement. So in such a situation, he'll be a principal, while to the other partners, he will be just an agent representing the firm. Okay, so a partner will be acting as a principal when he is dealing with the outsiders. At the same time, he is an agent representing the partnership firm. Agent means what? A person who represents someone is called as an agent. So to the other partners, he is an agent, but to the outsider, he is a principal, because he is a principal person representing the partnership firm. So these are the 5 features of partnership. Next, let us understand what are the advantages of partnership. First thing is, it is very easy to form. Okay, just when few people come together, okay, who are interested in doing a business, they can orally enter into an agreement, or they can write an agreement and sign, and immediately they can start the business. Okay, because registration of partnership is optional. Underline that, very, very important. Agreement is necessary. Okay, agreement can either be oral or written, but registration of partnership under the Act of 1932 is optional. Please underline that. They can either register the partnership firm, or they need not register. Just by an agreement itself, they can do the business. So it is very, very simple to form a partnership firm. Next is availability of large resources. See, for example, one of the biggest drawback of sole proprietorship concern is availability of capital was very, very less. So it is the single person has to raise whatever capital is needed for the business. But in the case of partnership, the partners who all enter into an agreement have their own different sources or capacity of raising the large financial resources to run the business. So every partner can secure more amount of capital and put it into the business. As a result, what will happen? The expansion of the business is very, very easy, and it is feasible also. If more capital is pulled into the business, automatically the expansion could be on the better side than a sole proprietorship concern. Next is benefit of consultation. See, 2 heads are better than 1 head, is it? One head here means the thought, thinking of a person. See, if it is a sole proprietorship concern, the individual only has to think, has to take a decision. Whether it is right or not, he is only bound to enjoy, whether it is profit or loss. But whereas in a partnership concern, there are more than one brain working to take a decision. So what will happen? A very good decision or a wise decision making is possible in case of partnership, because when 2 or 3 people sit and discuss together, definitely there is no place of taking hasty decision. If 2 people agree for one decision and 4 people agree for some other decision, definitely you can have a consultation with your partners and then take a best decision, okay, which is beneficial for the partnership firm. So this is not available in a sole proprietorship concern. So this is one of the biggest advantages, that is benefit of consultation with the partners. Next is division of work and greater managerial efficiency. Whatever is a workload, the load of management, it need not be borne by a single person. The work could be divided among the partners according to their experience and knowledge. Okay, the work can be divided. If one person, see for example, if 5 people are partners, one person can take care of the purchase department, the other person can take care of the sales department, one more person can take care of all the accounting and administration process, another person can take up all the legal formalities which are associated with the running of the firm. So another person can take a look into the financial aspect of the business. So the burden of running the business is being divided among the partners, Okay, as a result, each one will become effective and efficient in doing that. So, according to the ability and efficiency of a person, they can choose that particular load of work and part of the work, and then they can contribute to the business. Next is reduced risk. The risk of each partner is very much reduced when considerably, because whenever there is a loss, the loss is also shared by the partners. Like how the profit is being shared among the partners, the loss is also divided among the partners. So the impact of the loss will be very less when compared to the sole proprietorship concern. Next is unlimited liability and credit standing. The liability of the partners is unlimited. Underline this. That is, in case if the business assets are not enough to settle the debts of the creditors, in such a situation, the creditors can take the claim on the personal property of the partners. What will happen? The partners have to settle the debts by taking their private properties also, and then they have to settle the claims of the creditors. So when this is a situation, automatically the creditors also will be, or the banks also will give good amount of loan facility, because if the partners of the firm is not paying at any time, the personal property can be taken for the settlement of the claims also. So the possibility of raising loan is also possible in case of partnership firm. Next is safeguard of the minority interest. For the vital matters, unanimous decision consent of each partner is required. There is no unanimity, such decisions are not accepted. Very simple. See, minority interest. Suppose, for example, a crucial decision has to be taken in a business. Five partners are there. Two partners are in favor of a particular decision. Three partners disagree with the opinion or the decision that has to be taken at that particular juncture. So what will happen now? So when they sit together and discuss, only a unanimous decision will be taken. Okay, unanimous means all of them should give the consent for that particular decision. So when there is no unanimity, okay, such decisions are not accepted. So such decisions are not at all taken into, are not implemented in the business. Next is easy dissolution. Suppose, for example, the one of the partner has to come out of the business. Okay, that is also possible. Either dissolution of the partnership is possible, dissolution of the firm is also possible. If it is dissolution of partnership, it is very simple. Okay, they have to give 14 days notice. If a partner who wants to come out of the business, he has to give a notice, 14 days notice, telling that he wants to disconnect his partnership from that firm. That is enough. There is no legal hurdle which prevents the partner from coming out of the firm. Likewise, okay, dissolution of the firm is also very easy. As such, the business, if it is dissolved, you call it as dissolution of the firm. So no legal hurdle is there associated with dissolving the firm as such. If it is dissolution of the firm, the business itself will come to an end. This topic we shall learn in the next class. In the forthcoming topic, it is related to that also, dissolution of partnership and dissolution of firm. So with this, we are finishing the advantages of partnership. Okay. In the next class, we shall look into the disadvantages of partnership. With this, we are coming to the close of today's topic. I want you all to revise for the quarterly exam. Okay, so I am not giving you any portions from this lesson. I want you to write the characteristics of sole proprietorship concern. Okay, characteristics of sole proprietorship business, that is your homework for today. Okay, children, prepare well for your forthcoming exam. Okay, because the marks will be taken for valuation and it will be considered as quarterly marks. Okay, thank you children. Have a good day. Bye.